She reportedly stopped talking halfway through dinner. Not dramatically, not in tears, not some movie scene breakdown. Just quiet. And honestly, I think that silence told Queen Letizia everything she needed to know about what Leonor, Princess of Asturias, was really going through after the painful split everyone keeps whispering about online. Because here's the thing most people misunderstand about heartbreak inside royal families. The breakup itself is rarely the hardest part. It's the isolation afterward. It's realizing your sadness isn't private anymore. It's understanding that even your healing process can become public discussion, public gossip, public entertainment. And honestly, I think Letizia recognized that emotional danger immediately. That's why the energy around Leonor lately feels different to me. Softer, more protected, almost like her mother quietly stepped in and said, "Enough, my daughter needs space to breathe." Now pay attention to this because this is where the story becomes much deeper than another royal breakup headline. Most media coverage keeps focusing on who Leonor may have separated from. But personally, I think the more important story is how the experience changed her emotionally. Because heartbreak hits differently when your future is already carrying enormous pressure. Normal people can disappear after a breakup. Leonor can't. Normal people can cry privately, avoid cameras, make emotional mistakes, call friends at 2 a.m. Future queens don't really get that luxury. That changes the emotional experience completely. And honestly, I think Letizia understood that better than anyone around her. Why? Because unlike many royals born into monarchy, Letizia actually lived a normal emotional life before entering the palace. She understands public pressure differently. She understands scrutiny differently, and I think that experience made her approach Leonor's pain not like a queen, but like a mother first. That's important, because lately, I've noticed something interesting. Whenever Leonor appears publicly now, there's this subtle emotional steadiness around her that feels intentional. Not forced happiness, not fake confidence, just calmer. And personally, I don't think that happened accidentally. I think Letizia helped rebuild that emotional balance quietly behind the scenes. Not through royal speeches, not through palace strategy, but through emotional presence. Honestly, sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do is simply make their child feel emotionally safe again. And I think that's exactly what happened here. Now compare that with the way other royal families handle emotional narratives publicly. Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, often project this polished family stability in Britain. But Spain's royal family feels more emotionally exposed lately. More human. And strangely enough, I think audiences are connecting to that authenticity much more in 2026 than the palace expected. Because viewers today don't just follow royalty for glamour anymore. They follow emotional truth. That's the real algorithm now. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because the deeper these royal stories get, the less they become about crowns, and the more they become about family, pressure, heartbreak, healing, and emotional survival. Now let me say something that might sound controversial. I actually think heartbreak may have emotionally matured Leonor faster than royal training ever could. And before people misunderstand me, I'm not romanticizing pain. I'm saying emotional disappointment changes how people see the world. Especially young people carrying enormous expectations already. Sometimes heartbreak strips away illusion. It forces emotional clarity. And honestly, Leonor lately feels emotionally quieter in a way that suggests she's processing life differently now. Not weaker, more aware. There's a difference. And I think Letizia noticed that immediately. That's probably why their relationship appears especially close right now. Because mothers often recognize emotional exhaustion before anyone else does. Even before fathers sometimes. Even before the person suffering fully admits it themselves. Now here's the hot take I don't hear enough people discussing. I don't think Letizia tried to fix Leonor emotionally after the split. I think she tried to protect her from becoming emotionally cold afterward. That's a completely different goal. Because heartbreak inside powerful families can create emotional distance very quickly. People become guarded, careful, distrustful, and honestly, I think Letizia feared that more than the breakup itself. Why? Because future queens cannot afford emotional collapse, but they also cannot survive long-term emotional numbness. That balance matters a lot, and I think Letizia understands that because she has spent years navigating scrutiny, criticism, and emotional pressure inside one of Europe's most watched royal institutions. That experience probably gave her emotional instincts most people around the palace simply don't have. Now here's something else I keep thinking about. There's this growing online obsession with whether Leonor looked sad recently, whether she smiled less, whether she appeared distant. But honestly, I think people are asking the wrong question. The real question is, how does someone heal emotionally when the entire world keeps watching for signs of pain? That sounds exhausting. And personally, I think Letizia's biggest contribution wasn't solving Leonor's heartbreak. It was helping her emotionally reclaim privacy inside a life that barely allows privacy anymore. That's huge, because healing requires emotional safety. Without emotional safety, people perform recovery instead of actually experiencing it. And I think Letizia understood that danger immediately. That's why the palace energy around Leonor shifted so noticeably. Everything suddenly felt less aggressive, less performative, almost like somebody behind the scenes intentionally slowed the emotional pressure down. Now here's where I think this story becomes incredibly human. We often imagine queens as emotionally untouchable women who mastered pressure years ago. But honestly, I think Letizia probably saw part of her younger self in Leonor during this difficult period. Not the royal title, the emotional vulnerability, and that changes how a mother responds. Because once you recognize your child is hurting emotionally, royal protocol stops mattering as much. The human instinct takes over. Protect first, everything else later. And I think that maternal instinct explains so much about the atmosphere around Leonor lately. There's less pressure to appear perfect, more emotional softness, more quiet support, and honestly, that may be the smartest thing the palace has done in a long time. Because modern audiences can instantly detect fake emotional narratives now. That's why creators like MrBeast dominate attention online. People stay connected to stories that feel emotionally real. And Leonor's emotional journey suddenly feels very real to audiences. Not staged, not robotic, human. That's powerful. Now let me say something personal for a second. I actually think some of the strongest relationships between mothers and daughters are built during emotional recovery periods like this. Not because the pain is good, but because vulnerability creates honesty. And honesty changes relationships forever. Maybe that's why Leonor and Letizia suddenly seem emotionally more connected than ever. Publicly, pain often reveals who truly makes you feel safe. And honestly, that realization can change someone permanently. Now, do I think the palace will ever openly acknowledge any of this? Probably not. Royal institutions survive through control, not emotional transparency. But viewers are emotionally smarter now. People notice energy shifts. People notice emotional closeness. People notice when someone who looked emotionally overwhelmed suddenly appears steadier again. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with Leonor right now. Not a fairy tale recovery, not magical healing, just gradual emotional rebuilding with the help of someone who deeply understands her. Her mother. And maybe that's the real story behind all of this. Not the breakup itself, but the quiet way Queen Letizia helped her daughter emotionally survive it without losing herself in the process. Because honestly, that may be one of the most important lessons future queens ever learn. Heartbreak doesn't only reveal who hurt you. Sometimes it reveals who truly protects you too. So now I want to ask you something. Do you think Letizia's support made Leonor emotionally stronger after the painful split? Or do you think the pressure of royal life still makes true healing almost impossible? Because personally, I think that question says a lot more about modern monarchy than any official palace statement ever could.